Okay.
So welcome to everyone who's just joining, and welcome to today's community webinar. Today I'm really glad to be joined by Louise and Elias from Deloitte, and they're going to be talking us through their award-winning webinar. I'm also joined today by my colleague Iris from Totara.
Hey Matt, hi everyone.
Hi. So Deloitte won the 2020 Best Business Service Project, so it's great that we'll get to hear more about their Totara site today. Just a little bit of housekeeping for today's webinar. We are recording the webinar, and it will be available in a few days in the Totara community. If you have any questions today for either Louise or Elias, feel free to post those in the Q&A or in the community afterwards. I'm sure we can come back to you if you have some time to reflect.
As a starting point, Louise, I'd love to hear, would you be able to introduce Deloitte and what your organization does and what your team does within Deloitte? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so Deloitte is quite big, as you can imagine, and we don't know all the offerings that they offer ourselves yet. It can rank from audit to GTS, it's like SAP, our services that they offer. So it's really going to technology, public sector, life science, healthcare, in all industries. We have some offerings to support our clients. Mainly what we do within Deloitte, it's the human capital atmosphere. So I'm in the team of WT, Workforce Transformation, and Elias is in the team of People Analytics. And what I do there, I'm an educational scientist. So basically, I create learning programs for different target audiences, ranging from the financial sector to the chemical sector to public sector. And I think that sums it up for my team.
What about you, Elias?
Yeah, so I'm in a different team, but yet a strongly linked team with Louise. So I'm in the People Analytics team of Deloitte Belgium. I'm a senior consultant there, which means I mainly translate data insights that we get from tons of resources of clients to actionable insights. So looking into data that we already have, analyzing and modeling data, looking into the result and then translating, for example, insights into how can I reform my HR processes, how can I increase learning and development and motivation with people, how can we increase engagement. So all data-driven decisions translated towards clients.
Great. And what was some of the main challenge that you were facing that you decided to start using Totara?
For this project, I'm gonna go here. It's overwhelming a bit, but I'm gonna explain you step by step what it means. So basically, I think it's now 2 years ago, the partner of Deloitte Accountancy, which is mainly doing audit, ERP, system, compensations and benefits. He came with a question, like a very general question, please help me my accountants need to be more client-centric, and you should support me in let them become more client-oriented and become a more trusted advisor. So that was the main question. And what did we do? We had a lot of discussions how to approach it. But basically, the 800 people, that's our target audiences, they went to a full learning experience. And as you can see here, it's created with different channels. So what was in the beginning there, what happened? There are 11 offices in the Deloitte Belgium. And there we hang some posters with very famous quotes from movies around client centricity. And that's how we want to involve participants in the learning program. For example, you had me at Hello, we're going to change the game from Moneyball, or you talking to me from Taxi Driver. So there were around 20 posters hanging in 11 offices, and the chit chat started to, started basically with the accountants. So everybody was talking about it. We created the fuss, and that was basically your main goal in the first step of the campaign, to let them become more client-oriented. So in the next step, we put QR codes on the posters, and there people could scan the QR code, and our partner was explaining the objective of the learning experience program. He was explaining the why and what you can expect from being Deloitte, and what you can what they need to do in this whole learning experience. And then we started with some tailor-made communications, as you can see here, to strengthen involvement. And as you can see on the right side, this is Sam, which is one of our main characters. He was sending a message towards the accountants, and he invited them to make them an offer they cannot refuse. As of then, we come into the learning platform like Totara. We use, by the way, Totara because of the customization. It's very customizable in terms of activities, the look and feel, like the full branding that you can do for a company, but also because accountants need to learn anywhere, any place, anytime. And of the responsive design, we thought Totara would be a good fit as a means to an end, basically to let the accountants become more client-oriented. As you can see here on the right side, this is a first view on the learning platform, but let me show you how it looks in real life. Voilà, this is the client, a Deloitte Accountancy original series. As you can see, we based it on the Netflix look and feel. Sam and Sarah are basically our two fictive CEOs that we use with their company Timberstock throughout the whole program. And what the accountants needed to do, they needed to make an offer that Sam and Sarah could not refuse. And as you can see here, this is fully Totara. This is a program in Totara. And we talk about episodes to stay as a metaphor in the movie scene. And each episode is a course in Totara. As you can see here, the program exists out of 4 episodes. And the first one is about discovering and selecting your clients. So it's about who is Sam, who is Sarah, what is their company about, and which experts do we need to invite to the table to make an offer that they cannot refuse. When you win the offer, basically, you start with the onboarding and you really set up more like how are we going to work together, who needs to be in the team, what are specific deadlines, so really the onboarding phase. In the 3rd episode, we talk about how to build trust with your client and how to start performing. So what happens when you don't know the answer on a question? Do you have the right experts at the table? How do you deal with complaints of the client? How do you introduce a new colleague? These are all challenges that are popping up in this episode. And what's next in September, we launch the last episode of the client, which evolves an everlasting relationship. Basically, you will be a proud ambassador of Deloitte. What's interesting here from a UX UI point of view is that people could navigate very quickly towards the correct episode. As you can see here, the first episode, the second one is already completed with the scroll bar at the bottom. We are still in the 3rd episode, and the 4th one is coming soon, so this is still locked. If I scroll throughout the episode, you can see that we have in total 13 scenes for episode 3, and these are actually topics in Totara. So, and in every topic, you allocate specific activities. What's interesting here is everything what is in green is already completed, and what's white, that's your next step in the journey. And then you have everything in gray. That means that it's still locked. You cannot access this next step. And on the right side, you can see the total duration of each scene. And that sums it up in the timing at the top in here. So a course takes around 2 to 3 hours. And it's a combination of self-directed learning at the one side that I will show you in a minute, and then social learning at the other side that I will show you later by clicking on my cast. And what do I mean with social learning? It's basically we send team challenges towards the accountants in groups, teams of 10 people with 1 producer who is their coach, and they need to solve the challenges basically. And each challenge is related to a specific episode in here. If I mean self-directed learning, then I will go in the course discovery and selection, and then you will see that you will learn by yourself. So when you are ready, when you have time, you can complete each scene in a specific episode. So a little bit of information about within a course. So this is a course in Totara based on the settings of a topic. And these are the scenes, like you can see scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. These are topics. So you can scroll, and we have in total 8 topics that we created in this course, and each topic has different activities. Some are standard available in Totara, others are customized for the specific client. And if we see in this episode about discovery and selection, it's always important to start, what will you learn? So basically the learning objective. And in this case, I'm just going to shut down the voice of Mark. We chose for Mark, who is our screenwriter for this episode, Discovery and Selection. And he's explaining what people will learn. He's also more like the moderator throughout the whole learning program. So he's explaining specific concepts. That he is like the guy that everybody knows within Deloitte Accountancy, who is doing the talk in the full learning program. He's explaining the learning objectives in this specific case. And maybe fun fact, to stay in the metaphor of going to the movies, we shot all our movies in the Kinopolis in Ghent, which is a cinema that people visit in Belgium. So here he's explaining the learning objectives, and then we start the data tracking part. So here we're gonna ask our learner, it's now time for you to reflect what you've learned so far from the learning objectives. And together with Elias, we created sentences that are linked to the learning objectives, and people need to state for themselves, ranging from never true to always true, where they are at this moment. So for example, when speaking to the client, I listen to the client's opinion with an open mind. I believe that this is often true. So I'm the green dot, and then the gray dot are your peers. So we receive actually real life data from an individual and from the group on the learning objectives. So that's the first step in every episode. So thinking about the learning objectives and then reflect. And then we have added an extra scene, which is called casting. And Elias, I'm going to give the word to you now.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. So indeed, the first scene within the first episode was really about getting to know the entire audience. And that's why we also called it a casting, of course. But if you think of the transformation that actually people need to go through as an accountant, so imagine you're doing your job as a number cruncher, you're doing really accounting work, focusing on the financials, doing a lot of things on your own, behind your laptop, behind your computer. Imagine that within 5 years, your boss is telling you, yeah, your job will change, everything will be automated. I don't want you to be at your laptop or computer all the time. Like 50% of the time, you will be at a client discussing new opportunities, new projects, and other stuff. So, of course, that's a very drastic transformation. And if you look at merely from a point of view on skills and capabilities, then you're forgetting something. What you forget is actually, are people really motivated to do that kind of job in the future? So that was why we in the learning journey included an assessment on professional interests and motivation. So it consists of a survey, 30 statements where you had to fill in, again, like you used to do the learning objectives, but there's 30 statements where you can assess, for example, whether you are a sympathetic person, whether you like to be organized, and all these things referred actually to what drives you in a career and what gives you energy. It's a very important part of getting to know the audience. And Louise is pulling up a slide here that actually shows the kind of model that we use to structure this kind of thinking. because when we talked to the partners of accounting, they were really focused on the skills and the knowledge that people wanted to learn, because they thought, okay, this way we will increase their capability in the future and they will become more client-centric. But of course, career motivations are very important. If your job changes a lot, then it could be that the new role is something that you won't get motivated much. So that's why we included a survey, for example, to assess those career motivations. That's something that you see on the left in the model and in the middle. But given that we are working with a learning platform, we also wanted to track learning behaviors, but also platform behaviors during the entire journey. And that's often from a learning analytics point of view, where a lot of clients are focused on, and those are the real things to assess, for example, the progress of people. Are they lagging behind? Are they going the extra mile? How many times do they log in? Who logs in? Those are the kind of data that you automatically track. And in Totara, you can also have this report features, of course. So we use those data to build a model. And we also used all the data to make a persona analysis, because a lot of previous projects, when we think of new learners, we think of different personas. We do a qualitative assessment, mainly workshops where we try to define different types of learners. Here we use the assessment of the career motivations, to check whether we had different types of accountants in terms of career interests. So is each of the accountants motivated by the same thing in his job, or is he motivated by something else? And how does that match up to the future role that people will have? And that's the reason why we use a scientific model to build a persona analysis. And maybe Louisa, on the next slide, we can already deep dive a little bit into this kind of model. Maybe for some people familiar, because if you have done some career coaching in the past, this is a model that has been used a lot. It's the RIASEC model, and it actually describes both jobs and people on 6 characteristics. So you can describe the jobs, for example, on an investigative characteristic, a realistic, or an artistic characteristic. So for example, artistic jobs are, of course, jobs where you need to create things like an architect or a painter. But accountants, for example, are mostly jobs where you need to be a little bit conventional. You like to work in a structured way with numbers. You're also a little bit investigative normally. And so we described the current job of an accountant with these 6 characteristics. And we also did that for the future job. So we also had an exercise together with leadership just to assess, okay, if you look at the future role, how would it look like? And it looked entirely different in a sense that the enterprising characteristic that you see in the purple box, that is something that is very important in the future for an accountant. Why? Because that is the description of a job where you need to persuade other people, like clients, where you need to motivate a team, motivate clients. So it's a really important characteristic of the future role. And when we did the assessment, the casting, as you've seen it on the platform, the results showed us that on average, most people are not really enterprising. So they're not really motivated by persuading others. They're more motivated by the conventional motivation, so really working in a structure, and in the investigative characteristics. So you actually have a quite traditional motivational point of view on the role that people have and how they feel they are getting motivated in their job. But when we did a persona analysis, so we did a statistical analysis called cluster analysis, just to discover patterns in all of those profiles. And then we saw that there are 3 different patterns, 3 different profiles or personas that came up in the data. We had one profile that was already quite aligned with the role. So those were the people within accounting that are really high on enterprising and conventional and investigative. So those were the creative ID people, but also the client-centered people that we wanted to work with in the future. And then you had a little difference between 2 other profiles, 2 personas who were more conventional, more investigative, and less enterprising. So those were the more traditional accountants. And as you can imagine, for leadership, that's an important insight, because it shows you that in terms of learning and maybe learning motivation, the ambition that you will have in terms of learning goals will be different for those groups. And people who are already in line as in terms of career interest with a future profile, that those people will probably be easier at getting through the learning journeys, at transforming different skills and capabilities, while the people who are more conservative and more aligned with the traditional role, they will maybe experience more difficulties to get a grasp of the content, to fully understand why we are doing this. So their progress might be mitigated by their career interest that they have. And to be clear here, the goal here is really to guide people in the best way and support them in the best way, not to say, we have a very big group of traditional accountants, we don't need them in the future, we won't skill them. No, we really want to have a best mix of people in the future. So that means that the traditional accountant with traditional interests, he will still be very important in the future, but he, for example, he or she should be matched up with somebody who is already interested in doing accounting work of the future. So this is the kind of psychological framework that we were using in the back to actually be able to personalize learning more, not to individualize learning, but to personalize it and to make sure that we can fully support people. And then I think on the next slide, there was still, yeah, so we had, of course, a lot of data, maybe a brief overview of what data we already used. I really wanted to deep dive on the RIASEC scores because it's an important part of the learning journey, and because it's also important to support people in the future. But we also had other data. So the learner input data, there you had the interest scores from the RIASEC assessment, but you also had formative questions, of course, about learning content. Did people view a certain video thoroughly? Did they read it well? So formative questions to really test their knowledge about a certain topic. Then also some self-rated assessment on crucial capabilities. So for example, empathic listening was a very important skill. So we also made self-assessments during the episodes. We also had not only feed-forward data, but also feedback data. So what will you do in the future, or what learning objectives do you want to reach? But also in next episodes, looking back, okay, did you improve? Did you do this kind of objectives? How easy or how difficult it was? And we also asked each learner, of course, about their learning experience with an NPS score at the end of each episode. And we used all of these kind of data indeed to match up with the profiles, so with the personas that we had. And the top box is actually the usage data of the platform, so the logins, the clicking data, the learning completion data that we used for communication purposes. So each time, each week, we gave an update to the leadership saying, okay, we have this kind of progress. 30% of people are ahead of the goal. 50% of people are, for example, on track, and then the remaining percentage is lagging behind. And then we had 3 different communication sets in order to motivate people to be on track. And I think this mainly sums up indeed the data that we started to track. I think Louise can show you hands-on how it looks like, all this kind of input data.
Yes. If there is a question or something, please ask.
Yeah, just before we jump back to that, yeah, just got a couple of questions about the way the site looks, but we'll come to those perhaps at the end. Just going back to you, Elias. Obviously, that's quite a huge framework that you've put together there. And are you getting lots of good feedback from the accountants about that? Are people feeling more satisfied with their jobs as a result of this framework that you have in place?
Well, we started the analysis at the first scene. So during the first scene, we couldn't, during the first episode, we couldn't actually grasp their feedback already. But at the start of the second episode, we provided people with a personalized report. So they really got an insight on the scores that they got on the assessment. And we got feedback afterwards that it helped them to recognize themselves, to be able, okay, what motivates me in my job? And we also got the feedback that people are using it in their goal setting. So each accountant has a goal setting with the coach each year. At the beginning of a new fiscal year, they tackle, okay, where do I want to grow? Where do I want to be at within a year, even within 2 or 3 years? And such a report helped them really to understand, okay, who am I in terms of career interest, career motivations? and how can it help me to reach my objectives. So overall, we had a positive experience, or accountants had a positive experience with using this model.
That's great to hear. And Louisa, are you going to show a little bit more of the...
Yeah, so basically Elias gave a full overview of all the data that we tracked. And maybe I'm going to highlight a little bit more which kind of learning formats that we have used in Totara. So I'm not going to explain them all, but I will highlight some of them, like the video, the PDF. I think you all, if you use Totara, you are all aware of the activities that we have. So if we go to scene 2, that's really preparing the first meeting. So from a content point of view, that's basically if you meet Sam and Sarah, you should prepare yourself. And how do we share the content? First, they need to think, can we work for this client? So within accountancy, you receive a PDF. It's like a flow where we highlight yes or no, you can work for the client. Then Mark is back here explaining what's next in the preparation, and it's threefold. It's getting to know Sam and Sarah up front. It's getting to know the company timber stock, and it's getting the right experts to the table. That's what he is saying in here. And we did a deep dive on Sam and Sarah. So we created a carousel where we highlight 2 fictive personas. And we asked people with the word cloud how to get to know Sam and Sarah even better before having met them. And normally you can see only this on the screen. People need to select from this list which channels that they're using right now. And if you select a channel, a word cloud is popping up, and the bigger the word, the more people that selected the word. And the word in green is the one that you chose. So that is basically which channels you are using right now, but then we reuse the same customized activity, which will you use in the future. And that's how we let people stimulate reflection basically on what to do next, which action points that they can take. Then we have the case timber stock, which is explained in a video. And maybe a funny thing to mention, you can see on the left side that we have the numbers dropping and going up. So that's basically the structure that we gave our accountants to follow the full program. So you can see 1 bounces on 2, bounces on 3, bounces on 4, 5, 6. And that's actually your completion tracking. So the number represented on the left side is the same number as you can see here in scene completed. So in order to complete this specific scene, so this specific topic, they need to have 14 out of 14 to go to the next stage. If I go further, these are all downloadable PDFs, and it's about the assignment that they need to do. And then there was a first hint towards the cost, and that's where the social learning kicks in. So people came to point 9, and then they needed to think with their team about this exercise on how to fill in the business model canvas for timber stock. Now, if I go to my cast, what can you see there on the social learning page? You have 1 producer, which is mainly your coach throughout the whole program, which the duration of this program is around 2 to 2.5 years. And so Kurt, he's our producer, and there are around 10 actors in your team. And the actors, like the people from accountancy, are spread from different offerings. So you will meet all new people. And in this case, it's the assignment about episode 3, building trust and performing. You always have an individual assignment and a team assignment. And what do they need to do here in this specific case? They need to create a video on how they deal with complaints. So, they need to download an image and insert how they deal with complaints. And then they need to drop it in this custom-made activity where people can download from their team members what they responded to the question. And in this specific case, it was a team assignment about creating a video on how to introduce a new colleague to the client. So they were set up with with a team of 10 people. They create a video, they upload it in here, and people can see how the video looks like. So that's how we stimulate social learning in Totara. I'm not going to go through all the assets yet with the story, but these are just different visualization of how you can ask questions. It's an open text field. You can have another video. You can have like a word cloud popping up. We have e-learnings in the full platform. Maybe I'm going to show you how we do it. And it's all in the same look and feel how we create this learning experience. So as you can see here, the meeting, it's an e-learning, and we visualize it with a nice image, and then they click on the play button and they can go through, do the e-learning. We only use e-learnings to track knowledge. So how much did you already know about the topic? It's not really dumping information, because that we do in the videos. Here it's really applying it. And maybe I'm gonna scroll through the end a bit, because every episode closes with what did you learn so far? So it's like a downloadable PDF with the key takeaways. It's like a video where we highlight to discuss this with your coach, and it always ends with a quote. And then in the last scene, you define your personal action points. What does it mean? All the learning objectives from the beginning are represented here. People need to select which one they will apply as of tomorrow. Then you can see again the word cloud popping up. And these are the same questions that we ask in episodes, in the next episode. This is also data that we track per profile. And then at the end, we always have, like you have in Netflix, to be continued. So that's basically to stimulate, to trigger people to watch the next episode that will come. And maybe I will just highlight one video that we created, if that's okay. The next episode is basically when everything is going wrong in project management, what will happen? Let me know if you don't hear the music.
Can't hear anything so far. Perhaps in 3 seconds. Here we go.
You cannot hear it?
No.
Not yet.
No, then I cannot share it, I think.
I'll have to...
Yeah, so basically this is just a trailer to introduce the next episode. And then we always ask how likely it is that you would recommend this learning to other colleagues, and an open text field for some feedback. So voila, this is the full learning experience that we've created for Deloitte Accountancy.
I really like what you've done with the movie themed approach and the fictional characters. How did you came up with the idea of using movies as a theme to in this project?
Oof, it's a hard one. Because we wanted to have like easy navigation, and then Netflix was the first thing that pops up in our mind. And then the link was really fast elaborated to the movie scene. That's the reason.
Very nice. And what are you, I can see there's a coming soon episode, so I assume that's the one next to build. What are you hoping to achieve next and for the future? What are you going to build next, basically? Yeah,
so there we're going to increase the social learning a bit more. So they will have bigger challenges based on everything that they learned so far. And what we want to do extra is to see at clients how they are really, everything what they've learned, do they apply it or not? So push questions to the clients.
Louise, at the start you showed something that was quite interesting. You talked about how to market the platform before it went live. So you showed some of the posters that were on the wall around offices. And that's something that people often struggle with at the start, is launching the platform, making sure everyone knows about it. How did you find adding those posters to the walls? Did that create a lot of conversation? Were people talking about it?
Yes, it was a conversation starter for people on the floor. It triggers some buzz. People are asking, how do you know what is this and what is it about? And then they start talking about it. And also questions came to the partners who were launching this project. So they were really happy to see the buzz. And the click rates in the beginning to launch the platform were also high because of that.
That's great.
It was also, sorry, it was also fun for Louise and I, because we were in the office when the campaign got launched. So we walked through the office on the different floors, and then people were chit-chatting about the posters. We knew what was happening. It was fun to hear that they were really interested in what is this about. And afterwards also on the social media, so on Yammer, people started discussing, and then you get the ball rolling, of course.
So how long was this period of like the build up and teasing people with the posters and the different communications before you actually went live? Roughly.
I think it's a month up front.
Okay, like a month of teasing before you announced.
Yeah, because first it was the posters, then it was a QR code, then it was a communication campaign via mail, and then it was the launch of the learning platform.
Very nice. That must have made an interesting impression.
It's really good to be able to market the platform like you've done and to get it to be so successful with everyone joining. We're getting a lot of questions about the platform itself because of obviously how attractive it is. And just wondering, people are asking how much of the site is customized, and has that been done by Deloitte?
Yeah, so it's fully done by our team. And how much is customized? It's only some activities, but all the rest you can do yourself.
So you can see these at the top, the carousel, and these ones here, yeah. These ones, are they?
This is a program.
Great. And then the sidebar that you showed with the numbers going down the side. Once a person did it, the completion activity, which looks really good as well. Is that a customization there?
Yeah, so the completion tracking, everybody who's using Totara knows that there is an activity completion related to each activity, and then you have an activity completion related to the course. So that's basically standardly used, and then our designer basically created this structure. So that's customized, and that is linked towards the scene completion.
That's great. So you've taken what's out of the box and just built on it to improve just for what you need. For example, the word clouds as well. Those are customization, aren't they?
Yeah.
And how are people responding to those? Are you finding that people are enjoying those word clouds and do you get
because it's really interactive. They normally said, it's really a new way of learning that enters accountancy. Because normally, or you receive a workshop, or you receive like a boring look and feel on the learning platform. And here they were really engaged with the different formats. They are very happy to follow it. And we can also see it on the completion of the courses.
Yeah, it looks like a really, really polished site. And which version of Totara are you using? Do you know? Is it 12 or?
I think this was the 12 still, yes.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Louise. If anyone has any other questions for Louise or Elias, feel free to ask them now.
There's a question around whether you're using Totara's competencies framework with the RIASEC model.
Well, all frameworks on competencies and skills and capabilities were specific for the Deloitte accounting team. So they have their own framework within the learning and development team there. So everything that we are using in terms of competence, skills, and skills assessed here, also mindset, personality, it all comes from the Deloitte accounting specific framework.
But we don't use the Totara feature, no.
Okay. And just for upgrades, obviously you have quite a lot of customization. Is the site difficult to upgrade, or do you find that quite easy to upgrade?
It's quite easy.
Great. Thank you.
Straightforward. Very good.
Iris, did you have any other questions today, or is there anything else that Louise or Elias you'd like to say? Is there anything you're particularly both proud of the site that you feel you'd like to share? Is there anything that you've taken sort of professional growth from building this site?
Well, for me, I think it's on the higher level. It's with this kind of platform and with embedding data, we really reached a certain level of interest within the leadership team there, like, okay, this is not only important for learning and development, but it's also very important for recruitment, for our onboarding. So they really have a sense of that the engagement that you have with the learner, it's not only important for the accountants that work at accounting now, but also for the accountants that work in the future. So maybe reusing this kind of platform also for onboarding activities and other activities. And then all the insights that they got from the data, like with the personas, also very important to see, okay, how can we recruit, for example, profiles with an interest in being client fit and client centered. So for me, that was the biggest achievement, that they had these insights and, okay, we can use this kind of thing, not only for learning and development.
Yeah, it's not just for you, but also for the accountants themselves, really getting a lot of data on how they're scoring, their profile.
And for me, I think it's twofold. The first one is that we are making big steps in data-driven learning, that we can really monitor in the back end who do we have in front of us and how can we guide them more throughout learning more, basically, because that's our ultimate goal for me as an educational scientist. And the second part is I'm a big fan of the flipped classroom principle, which means that you learn everything up front. So everything that we do here, it's like learning by yourself, anytime, any place, anywhere. And then you can come with your gained knowledge towards a workshop, for example, where you really apply what you've learned so far, because normally we use a lot of time in workshops to already explain what we could explain up front and don't use the time efficiently when people come together. And I think that's what I want to do more in the L&D atmosphere.
That's great to hear as well, because I think a lot of people are sort of coming to learn about flipped learning as a result of COVID-19 as well. So they're starting to use a lot more of that principle to, as you say, show the information up front and then be able to clarify things with a trainer afterwards. We've got another question just about the learning, actually. How long is each segment or unit? So how long roughly does it take to complete one course?
Yeah, you can see it here. On the episode itself, at the top right corner, you can see the total duration of a module.
So someone's asking if this is considered micro-learning. I don't think it would be an hour and 54. What do you think? Probably not micro-learning, but definitely an in-depth course there, isn't it?
It depends on what you mean with micro-learning.
Yeah, that's a good debate to have. Okay, does anyone else have any questions today for Louise or Elias or Iris? Do you have any further questions?
Just one final question for me. With regards to the NPS kind of survey that you then did, what was the feedback there specifically from the learners? Yeah,
overall we had like this kind of neutral score at the first episode. But there was a difference between the three personas that I talked about. So people who were already in line with the enterprising persona that they wanted to achieve or who already had those interests, they were very positive. So they had a really positive NPS score. And then the more traditional personas or profiles, they were more negative on NPS. So it was a negative score. So meaning that for them, it was really a stretch. And that's why also, after getting the feedback with the NPS, the team made the conclusion that maybe some learning was too ambitious and that we needed to take some steps back and really look into, okay, how can we help them being more engaged, but also having a more positive experience during learning.
Okay.
That's great. We haven't got any more questions coming in today, but thank you so much for taking us behind the scenes today and showing us your site. And again, congratulations on your, building an award-winning site as well. It's really great to see and to hear from you both today.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
So I hope you have a good end to the afternoon and we'll speak soon. I think some people would like a few more questions about the custom CSS, but I might give you the email if that's okay, or we'll put this on the Totara community and people could ask there as well.
Yeah, you can send our emails, that's fine.
Okay, thanks very much, Louisa, and thanks very much, Elias, and thanks, Iris.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
all.
us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.